The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room Ambassador Elena Vasquez had ever seen. It stretched upward like a cathedral made of light and crystal. Floating platforms held the representatives of 12 ancient species. Each one had traveled the stars for thousands of years, before humans learned to make fire. Elena stood alone on the floor below them. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but her back was straight and her voice was steady. She had practiced her speech for months. She had memorized every word, every gesture. Humanity's future depended on this moment. "We come in peace," she said. Her voice echoed through the hall. "We come as friends. Earth offers trade, knowledge, and partnership to all who would have us." The Varathi High Speaker looked down at her. He was a being made of living crystal, tall and ancient. Light passed through his body and scattered into rainbows. He had lived for 3,000 years. To him, humanity was like a child who had just learned to walk. "We have reviewed your request," he said. His voice was like wind chimes in a storm. "The Council has prepared terms for your species." Elena felt hope rise in her chest. Terms meant negotiation. Negotiation meant they were willing to talk. A holographic document appeared before her. She read it carefully. With each line, her hope died a little more. Humanity would give up all claims to space beyond their own solar system. Human ships would be stopped and searched by Council patrols at any time. All human technology would be checked and controlled by Council experts. Humans would provide workers for Council projects across the galaxy. They would serve for periods of 10 years at a time. That in exchange, humanity would receive protection from hostile species. They would receive guidance from their elders. They would be allowed to exist. Elena read the document twice to make sure she understood. Then she looked up at the 12 platforms floating above her. "This is not partnership," she said quietly. "This is slavery with extra steps." The Crethany delegate made a sound like clicking stones. His species was insect-like, with many arms and eyes that never blinked. They shared one mind across billions of bodies. They found individual beings like humans to be strange and primitive. "You misunderstand," the Crethany said. "These terms are generous. Your species is young. You are violent. You are unpredictable. You spend most of your history killing each other. You cannot be trusted with freedom." Elena felt anger building in her chest. She had spent her whole life working toward this moment. She had believed that somewhere out there, among the stars, humanity would find wisdom and kindness. Instead, she found the same old story. The strong looking down on the weak. The old dismissing the young. "We have made mistakes," Elena admitted. "We have wars in our history. We have done terrible things to each other. But we have also created beauty. We have written poetry and composed music. We have loved and dreamed and reached for the stars. We are not perfect, but we are not servants." The Morthani delegate, a being that looked like a cloud of purple gas, pulsed with what might have been laughter. "Every young species says the same thing. They all resisted first. Then they learned their place." Elena looked around the room. She saw no sympathy in any face. She saw no respect. She saw only beings who had already decided what humanity was worth. Nothing she could say would change their minds. She thought about her grandchildren back on Earth. She thought about all the young people who had watched her ship leave, their eyes full of hope. She thought about what kind of future they would have under these terms. They would have food and safety. They would have protection. But they would not have freedom. They would not have dignity. They would grow up knowing that they were less than others. They would learn to bow their heads and follow orders. Elena made her decision. "The United Earth Confederacy respectfully declines," she said. The silence that followed was complete. For a long moment, nothing moved. Even the Morthani stopped pulsing. The Varathi High Speaker leaned forward. You decline? You understand what this means. I understand perfectly. No species has ever walked away from council terms. Not in 10,000 years. Elena smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had nothing left to lose. Then I suppose we will be the first. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the great hall. She did not look back. She did not hesitate. She simply walked away. Behind her, chaos erupted. Delegates shouted at each other. The Grethany clicked so fast it sounded like rain on metal. The Varathi High Speaker called for order, but no one listened. Elena kept walking. Outside the hall, her assistant was waiting. He was a young man named David, and his face was pale with fear. Ambassador, what happened? What did they say? They offered us chains, Elena said. I declined. But what will happen now? What will they do? Elena looked up at the alien sky. 3 moons hung overhead, each a different color. Somewhere beyond them, Earth waited. Her home, her people. They were counting on her. They will try to make us regret this, she said. They will cut us off from the galaxy. They will try to starve us and scare us into submission. Can we survive that? Elena started walking toward their ship. I don't know. But I know one thing for certain. My grandchildren will not grow up as servants. They will not bow to creatures who see them as less than animals. Whatever happens next, we will face it standing tall. David hurried to keep up with her. The Council has ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They have technology we can barely understand. How can we fight them? Elena stopped at the door of their ship. She looked back at the great hall one last time. She could still hear the arguing inside. We won't fight them, she said. Not yet. First, we will build. We will learn. We will become something they never expected. And when they finally realize their mistake, it will be too late. She stepped into the ship. The door closed behind her. Within the hour, they were gone, racing back toward Earth with news that would change everything. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, the arguing continued long into the night. But eventually, the delegates calmed down. They convinced themselves that humanity would return. All young species returned eventually. Hunger and fear always won in the end. They were wrong. But it would take them 100 years to understand just how wrong they were. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Ambassador Vasquez had walked away from the Galactic Council. Humanity was alone. Some people panicked. They had dreamed of joining a galaxy full of wonders. They had imagined alien friends and new worlds to explore. Now those dreams were dead. The Council had declared humanity a rogue species. No alien ship would trade with them. No alien world would welcome them. But something strange happened in the weeks that followed. The panic turned into something else. It turned into anger. And then it turned into determination. Elena Vasquez stood before the United Earth Parliament 1 month after her return. She was tired. She had not slept well since leaving the council hall. But her voice was strong. They called us violent, she said. They called us primitive. They said we needed to be controlled like animals. But they forgot one thing. Humans do not break under pressure. We grow stronger. The Parliament voted that same day. They created a new government called the United Earth Confederacy. Elena became its first Secretary General. And humanity began to build. The first years were hard. Earth had been trading with alien merchants for decades. They had grown dependent on alien medicine, alien fuel, and alien technology. When the trade stopped, people suffered. Factories closed. Hospitals ran out of supplies. Ships sat useless in ports without fuel. But humans adapted. They always did. Scientists worked day and night to understand the alien technology they still had. They took apart alien engines and studied every piece. They analyzed alien medicine and learned to make their own. They failed 1,000 times, but they kept trying. Dr. Sarah Chun was one of those scientists. She was young and brilliant, with a mind that never stopped working. She led a team of researchers on Mars, studying a crashed alien probe that had been found years ago. "The Council thinks we are stupid," she told her team. "They think we cannot understand their technology. Let us prove them wrong." It took 5 years, but Sarah's team cracked the secret of alien faster-than-light travel. It took 3 more years to build their first working engine. And it took only 2 years after that to improve upon the original design. By the time Earth's isolation was 20 years old, human ships were faster than anything the Council had ever built. Elena Vasquez, now gray and old but still sharp, watched the first new fleet launch from Earth orbit. Tears ran down her face. "They wanted us to crawl back to them," she whispered. "Instead, we learned to fly." But speed was not enough. Humanity needed to be strong. They needed weapons to defend themselves. And in this too, they found their gift. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. It was their greatest shame, but also their greatest teacher. They knew war in ways that peaceful species could never understand. They knew how to build weapons, how to use them, and how to win. General Marcus Stone led the military research division. He was a hard man with cold eyes and a brilliant tactical mind. He studied the Council's weapons and found them weak. "They have not fought a real war in 5,000 years, he reported to the Parliament. "Their shields are strong but predictable. Their tactics are old. They have forgotten what it means to face a creative enemy." His teams developed new weapons. They created missiles that could slip through shields. They built energy cannons that fired in patterns no alien computer could predict. They designed ships that could change formation in seconds, confusing enemy sensors. 30 years into the isolation, a Council scout ship entered human space. It was the first alien vessel to come near Earth since the embargo began. The captain's orders were simple: observe and report. The scout never saw the human patrol that surrounded it. One moment it was alone. The next moment, 50 ships appeared from nowhere, weapons armed and ready. The scout ran. It barely escaped. When it returned to Council space, the captain's report was ignored. Humans could not possibly have technology that advanced. The captain must have been mistaken. 40 years passed. Then 50. The Council continued to ignore the warnings. They were too busy with their own problems. Trade disputes, border conflicts, the usual business of running a galaxy. Meanwhile, humanity expanded. They colonized Mars completely. They built stations in the asteroid belt. They established outposts on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Each year, they pushed further into the dark. Elena Vasquez died at the age of 97. She passed peacefully, surrounded by her family. Her last words were simple: keep building. Never stop. Never bow. Her granddaughter, Maria Vasquez, took over as Secretary General. She was young and fierce, with her grandmother's eyes and her grandmother's spine. Under her leadership, humanity reached the outer edges of their solar system. They built a massive station at the edge of known space. They called it Gateway. It was humanity's door to the galaxy, waiting for the day when they would step through. 70 years after the isolation began, the Council finally sent another scout. This one was more careful. It watched from far away, using long-range sensors to study human space. What it saw made no sense. The readings showed energy signatures that should not exist, fleet movements that defied known physics, structures in the asteroid belt that were larger than anything the Council had ever built. The Scout's captain sent her report with a single recommendation: do not engage humanity. Repeat. Do not engage. The council received the report. They read it carefully. Then they dismissed it as fear and exaggeration. Humans were primitive. Everyone knew this. Whatever they had built during their isolation, it could not possibly threaten the civilization that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. This was their second mistake. It would not be their last. On Earth, the 80-year celebration of the Confederacy was a day of joy. Humanity had survived. They had grown. They had become something new. Secretary-General Maria Vasquez, now old herself, addressed the crowds. My grandmother walked away from that table because she believed in us. She believed that humanity could stand alone. She believed that we could build our own future. Today, we prove her right. She raised her glass to the sky, to Earth, to humanity, to the stars that wait for us. We are ready. In homes and stations across the solar system, billions of humans raised their glasses too. They did not know what was coming. They did not know that soon their strength would be tested in ways they could never imagine. But they were not afraid. They had learned the most important lesson of all. They were not alone because no one wanted them. They were alone because they chose to be. And when they chose to step back into the galaxy, it would be on their own terms. The isolation had lasted 80 years. It was about to end. And when it did, the galaxy would never be the same. The Zirathi were hunters. They had roamed the galaxy for 1,000 years, taking what they wanted from those too weak to stop them. They were tall and scaled, with forearms and teeth like knives. Fear was their weapon as much as their guns. Warlord Kreth stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the star charts. Human space glowed like a jewel in the darkness. Isolated, unprotected, perfect. The council has abandoned them, his second-in-command said. They have no allies. No one will come to help. Kreth smiled. It was an ugly thing, full of hunger. How many ships can they have? They are young. They are weak. This will be easy. He gathered his fleet. 300 warships, armed with weapons that had crushed a dozen species. His warriors were eager. They had heard stories about humans. Soft creatures made of meat and water. They would make excellent slaves. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. Their target was a human colony called New Helsinki. 50,000. Humans lived there, farming the rich soil of an alien world. They had no idea what was coming, but someone else did. Admiral Lisa Chun commanded the human patrol fleet in the outer territories. She was the granddaughter of Dr. Sarah Chun, who had cracked the secret of alien engines so many years ago. Science ran in her blood, but so did steel. Her sensors detected the Zirathi fleet while it was still hours away. She studied the numbers calmly. 300 enemy ships. She had 47. Should we call for reinforcements? Her first officer asked. No time, Lisa said. Besides, we won't need them. She gave her orders. The human fleet moved into position around New Helsinki. They waited in the darkness between stars, silent and invisible. The colonists below were evacuated into underground shelters. Everything was ready. The Zirathi dropped out of faster-than-light travel, expecting to find a helpless world. Instead, they found death. The first wave of human missiles hit before the Zirathi could raise their shields. 40 ships died in seconds, torn apart by weapons they could not see or understand. The explosions lit up the void like a second sun. Warlord Kreth screamed orders. His fleet raised shields and returned fire, but their weapons found nothing. The human ships were not where they should be. They moved in patterns that made no sense, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. Where are they? Kreth demanded. Find them! His sensors screamed warnings. Another wave of missiles. Another 30 ships gone. The human weapons passed through Zirathi shields as if they were not there. This was impossible. This could not be happening. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, 240 Zirithi ships were dead or dying. The survivors floated helplessly, their engines destroyed and their weapons offline. Warlord Kreth stood on a bridge filled with smoke and blood, staring at the view screen in disbelief. A human face appeared. Admiral Chun looked at him with eyes that held no mercy and no fear. "You came to take slaves," she said. "You found something else." Kreth had never known terror before. He knew it now. "What are you?" "We are human, and you are defeated. Surrender your remaining ships, and your warriors will live. Refuse, and you will join the others." She pointed to the burning wrecks that filled the space around them. The bodies of Zirathi warriors floated among the debris. Kreth had lost more ships in 11 minutes than in his entire career. He surrendered. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The Zirithi, feared raiders who had never been defeated, had been crushed by the humans, the isolated primitives, the rogue species that the Council had dismissed and forgotten. Within days, a recording of Admiral Chun's victory message was playing on every world. Beings who had trembled at the name Zirithi now watched them beg for mercy, and they watched the human admiral grant it. She could have killed them all. The Vorthani High Speaker said, watching the recording for the 10th time. She had the power. Why did she show mercy? No one could answer him. It made no sense. The strong did not spare the weak. That was not how the galaxy worked, but the humans did not follow the galaxy's rules. 1 month after the battle, Warlord Kreth knelt before Secretary General James Chung. James was Lisa's brother, and he had inherited their grandmother's genius, along with their great-great-grandmother's determination. "We offer our services," Kreth said. The words burned his throat, but he spoke them anyway. "The Zirithi will fight for humanity." James studied the warlord carefully. "Why would you serve us?" "We destroyed your fleet. We killed your warriors." "You should hate us. We are hunters," Kreth said. "We respect strength. And we have never seen strength like yours." He paused. "Besides, you could have slaughtered us. You did not. That is strange. We wish to understand it." James smiled. "Welcome to the Human Alliance," he said. "The Zirithi were the first, but they were not the last. Species across the galaxy watched what humanity had done. They saw power, but they also saw something rare. They saw mercy. They saw strength that did not need cruelty. They saw people who could have destroyed their enemies, but chose instead to make them friends. Many of these species had suffered under Council rule. They had been forced to pay tribute, to follow laws they did not believe in, to bow before beings who looked down on them. They had accepted this because they had no choice. Now they had a choice. The Velthri were next. They were a peaceful species of artists and builders, and the Council had taken half of everything they created for thousands of years. When they heard about humanity, they sent a message. "We wish to trade. We wish to be friends. Will you have us?" James sent back a simple reply. "Come. You are welcome." Then came the Rithani, a species of engineers who had designed half the Council's technology, but received none of the credit. Then the Marvati, shapeshifters who had been hunted almost to extinction because the Council feared them. Then a dozen more. Then 100. Each one received the same answer. "Come. You are welcome. We do not ask for your service. We ask for your friendship." 5 years after the Battle of New Helsinki, the Human Alliance numbered 47 species. They controlled a region of space that rivaled the Council's own territory. They built and traded and grew stronger every day. The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing fear. They had ignored humanity for too long. They had dismissed every warning. And now it was too late to stop what they had created. The Varathi High Speaker called an emergency meeting of the Council of 12. His crystal body pulsed with colors of anxiety. "We must act. he said. "The humans grow too strong. They attract our subjects like a flame attracts insects. If we do not stop them now, we may never be able to." But before they could decide what to do, something else happened. Something that made humanity's rise seem like a minor problem. Something ancient woke in the heart of the galaxy. And it was hungry. The Council's problems were just beginning. And soon, they would have to face their greatest fear. They would have to ask humanity for help. The Vorth Collective had slept for 2 million years. It was a machine intelligence, born in an age when the galaxy was young and fire was new. It had built itself from the corpses of dead stars and the memories of forgotten species. It had grown until it filled the empty spaces between worlds. Then it had grown tired. It had seen everything, done everything. It had no purpose. So it had wrapped itself in darkness and slept, dreaming electronic dreams in the heart of the galaxy. Now it was awake. And it was hungry. The first world to die was Crethony Prime. One moment, it was a thriving hive of 20 billion minds. The next moment, there was only silence. The Vorth ships descended like metal locusts. They took everything. The buildings, the technology, the people. They processed it all into raw materials and added it to themselves. The screams of the Crethony hive mind echoed across subspace. Then they stopped forever. The Council fleet arrived 3 days later. 500 ships, the pride of galactic civilization. They found nothing but dust and emptiness where a world had been. And they found the Vorth waiting for them. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Not one Council ship survived. Panic swept across the galaxy. The Vorathi High Speaker called meeting after meeting, but there were no answers. The Vorth had technology that made the Council look primitive. They had numbers beyond counting. And they had no mercy, no fear, no weakness that anyone could find. World after world fell. The Vorathi lost their homeworld in a single day. The purple clouds of the Morthani were scattered across space. Species that had existed for 1 million years vanished in hours. The Council tried everything. They built new weapons. They formed new alliances. They sacrificed fleet after fleet in desperate battles. Nothing worked. The Vorth simply absorbed everything thrown at them and grew stronger. Ambassador Korath of the Veshan was old now. His scales had faded to pale gray, and his eyes were clouded with age. But his mind was still sharp. He had been one of the few Council members to vote against the terms imposed on humanity so long ago. He had seen the wisdom in Elena Vasquez's eyes when she walked out. He had known then that the Council was making a terrible mistake. Now, he was the only one left who might be able to fix it. "We must go to the humans," he said at the emergency council meeting. "We must ask for their help." The chamber erupted in anger. The remaining delegates screamed at him. Ask the primitives? Beg the rogue species? Never. It would be better to die with honor than to crawl before beings they had rejected. Korath waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke again. "Honor will not stop the Vorth. Pride will not save our children. We dismissed humanity as violent and primitive. But they are still alive, and we are dying. Perhaps we were wrong about them. Perhaps we were wrong about many things." The silence that followed was heavy with shame. In the end, they had no choice. The Council voted to send an envoy to humanity. Korath volunteered. It was fitting, he thought. He had tried to warn them 100 years ago. Now, he would try to save what was left. His ship crossed into human-aligned space 3 weeks later. He expected to be attacked or arrested. Instead, he was met by an escort of human ships that guided him gently toward Earth. The blue world that had birthed the species of dreamers and fighters. Korath looked at it through his view screen and felt something strange. Hope. The human. Alliance Parliament was nothing like the council chamber. It was simple and practical, with representatives from 50 different species sitting side by side. There were no floating platforms, no displays of power. Everyone was equal. Korath stood before them. His old bones ached, but he forced himself to stand straight. "I come not as a conqueror," he said. "I come as a beggar. My people are dying. The galaxy is burning, and we need your help." The chamber was silent. Korath could see the conflict on their faces. Some looked at him with hatred, remembering the years of isolation and contempt. Others looked at him with something like pity. 100 years ago, Korath continued, the council offered humanity a choice between slavery and exile. You chose exile. You built yourselves into something great while we laughed at you. We were arrogant. We were fools. And now we face the price of our foolishness. He lowered his head. I cannot undo what was done. I cannot give back the years that were stolen. I can only ask, please, help us. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Old wounds were opened. Bitter memories were shared. Many spoke against helping the council. Let them face the consequences of their cruelty. Let them burn. Fleet Admiral James Chun listened to it all. He was old now too, but his eyes were still sharp. He thought about his grandmother, who had cracked the secrets of alien technology. He thought about his great-great-grandmother, who had walked away from that table so long ago. He thought about what they would want him to do. When his turn came to speak, he stood slowly. I understand the anger, he said. I feel it too. For generations, my family carried the memory of that day in the council chamber. The day when humanity was called primitive and violent and unworthy of respect. He paused. But I also remember what my great-great-grandmother said when she came home. She said she walked away not because she hated the council, but because she loved humanity too much to see it enslaved. She did not want us to become bitter. She did not want us to become like those who hurt us. He looked around the chamber. If we turn away now, we prove them right. We prove that humans care only for themselves. We prove that we are the violent primitives they always said we were. Is that who we want to be? The chamber fell silent. The Vorth do not care about old arguments. They do not care about pride or revenge. They will kill everyone, human and alien alike. We can fight them alone and probably lose. Or we can fight them together and have a chance to win. That is the real choice before us. The vote was not easy. Many still wanted to refuse. But in the end, James Chun's words found their mark. The human alliance would help. Not for the council's sake, but for the galaxy's. For the billions of innocent beings who had done nothing wrong. For the future that everyone deserved. Korath wept when he heard the decision. Tears ran down his old scaled face, and he did not try to hide them. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you. James Chun walked over to him. He put a hand on the old ambassador's shoulder. We are not doing this to be thanked, he said. We are doing this because it is right. That is the difference between us and the council of old. We do not ask what we can take. We ask what we can give. Korath looked into the human's eyes. He saw no hatred there, no desire for revenge. Only strength and kindness, mixed together in a way he had never seen before. Perhaps, Korath said quietly, we have more to learn from you than we ever imagined. James nodded. Perhaps. But first, we have a war to win. And we will win it together. The preparations began that same day. Human ships and alien ships, working side by side for the first time in a century. It would not be easy. The scars of the past ran deep. But they had a common enemy now, and common ground to build upon. The Vorth Collective continued its advance, consuming world after world. It did not know that something new was rising to meet it. Something it had never faced before. a galaxy united. Led by the species that everyone had underestimated, the final battle was coming, and humanity would be at its heart. The war against the Vorth Collective lasted 20 years. It was the longest and bloodiest conflict the galaxy had ever known. Entire star systems became graveyards. Species that had existed for millions of years were reduced to handfuls of refugees on crowded ships. The darkness between stars filled with the wreckage of 1,000 battles, but humanity held the line. Admiral Sarah Vasquez commanded the combined fleet from her flagship, the Unity. She was the great-great-granddaughter of Elena Vasquez, and she carried her ancestor's spirit in every decision she made. Around her, ships from 100 different species flew in formation. Former enemies fought side by side. Ancient rivals shared weapons and supplies. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The Vorth did not understand. Their machine minds could not process what they were seeing. Individual species were weak. They should have fallen easily. But together, they were something else. Together, they were dangerous. Human tactics proved deadly against the collective. For millions of years, the Vorth had faced enemies who fought in predictable patterns. They followed logical rules. They retreated when the odds were bad. They surrendered when defeat was certain. Humans did not follow these rules. Human ships attacked when they should have run. Human soldiers held positions long after logic said they should die. Human commanders made choices that seemed insane until suddenly they worked. The Vorth adapted, but humans changed faster. Every time the machines found a pattern, humans broke it. Why do they not stop? The collective asked itself. Why do they not fear death? It could not understand. It had never faced beings who chose to die for something greater than themselves. It had never met a species that valued hope more than survival. The war ground on. Years passed. Worlds burned and were rebuilt. Heroes rose and fell. Names that would be remembered forever were written in blood and fire. Commander Thrall of the Zerathi led the charge at the Battle of the Crimson Nebula. His ships broke through the Vorth line and destroyed a processing station the size of a moon. He died with a smile on his face, knowing his enemies had become his brothers. Dr. Mira Velthary created a weapon that disrupted Vorth communications. Her people had been artists, not soldiers. But she learned to fight because humans showed her that everyone had strength inside them. Ambassador Korath, too old to fight, traveled from world to world, reminding people why they were fighting. He told them stories of humanity. He told them about Elena Vasquez and her walk away from the council table. He told them that the galaxy was worth saving. And slowly, the tide began to turn. The Vorth Collective was vast, but it was not infinite. Each battle cost it ships and resources. Each fallen world was one it could not consume. Human weapons grew more effective. Human allies grew more numerous. The darkness began to retreat. The final battle took place at the heart of the galaxy, where the Vorth had slept for 2 million years. 1,000 ships gathered there, representing every species that still survived. At their head was the Unity, with Admiral Sarah Vasquez standing on its bridge. "This is it," she said to her crew. "Everything we have fought for comes down to this moment. The collective's central processing node is in that station. If we destroy it, the Vorth will fall." She looked at the massive structure ahead. It was the size of a small planet, bristling with weapons and surrounded by the last of the Vorth fleet. Millions of machine ships, ready to defend their heart. "Many of us will not survive this day," Sarah continued. "But our children will live in a galaxy free from fear. Our sacrifice will mean something. And that is all anyone can ask for." The fleet charged. The battle lasted 3 days. Ships died by the thousands. The Vorth threw everything they had at the attackers, and still they came. Human destroyers rammed enemy vessels to clear paths for their allies. Xerathi warriors boarded Vor stations and fought hand-to-hand with machine soldiers. Belthari artists died beside Crethni engineers, united in a cause greater than any of them. On the third day, the Unity broke through to the central node. Its weapons were mostly destroyed. Its shields were failing. Half its crew was dead. But Sarah Vasquez still stood on the bridge. "Fire," she ordered. The final shot was a human hand on the trigger. But the power behind it came from 100 species, working together as one. The beam struck the Vorth processing node and cracked it open. Light poured from the wound, brighter than any star. And then silence. The Vorth ships stopped moving. Their lights went dark. Across the galaxy, every machine in the collective fell still at the same moment. The war was over. Sarah Vasquez collapsed into her chair. She was wounded and exhausted, barely alive. But she was smiling. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." The celebrations lasted for weeks. On every world that still survived, beings of all species came together to mark their victory. They wept for those who had fallen. They laughed with joy at being alive. They held each other and remembered what they had learned. In the aftermath, there was talk of rebuilding the old order. The council had been destroyed, but perhaps something new could take its place. Something better. Something fair. Ambassador Yuki Vasquez stood before the gathered representatives of 100 species. She was young, with her family's dark hair and determined eyes. Behind her hung a banner showing the symbol of the Alliance, a circle of stars surrounding a human hand reaching upward. "Many of you want humanity to lead this new government," she said. "You want us to take the Council's place, to rule the galaxy as they once did." She shook her head. "We refuse." The chamber erupted in confusion. After everything humanity had done, after all they had sacrificed, they did not want power? Yuki raised her hand for silence. "We did not fight this war to become rulers. We fought because it was right. Because every being in this galaxy deserves to live free from fear and tyranny. If we take the Council's throne, we become no better than they were." She looked around the room. She saw beings who had been enemies and were now friends. She saw species who had survived extinction together. She saw the future she wanted to build. "Instead, I propose something new. Not a council that rules from above. Not an empire that demands obedience. But a compact. An agreement between equals. Every species has one voice. Every decision is made together. No one is above anyone else." The debate took months. Old habits were hard to break. Many species still wanted hierarchy and power. But in the end, Yuki's vision won. The Galactic Compact was signed 1 year after the war's end. At the signing ceremony, a stone was placed at the center of the new Parliament building. It was carved with words in every known language, including several that had been lost in the war. The human version was at the top, in simple letters that anyone could read. "We rise together, or we fall alone." Yuki stood before the stone with the other representatives. She thought about her ancestors, about Elena, who had walked away from injustice, about all the generations who had built and fought and dreamed, about the sacrifice that had brought them to this moment. A Varathi delegate approached her. He was young, born after the war, but he carried the weight of his people's history. "I want to apologize," he said, "for what my people did to yours, for the arrogance and cruelty of the old council. We were wrong." Yuki smiled at him. It was a warm smile, full of forgiveness. "The old council is gone," she said. "Its mistakes died with it. What matters now is what we build together. Let the past teach us, not trap us." She offered him her hand. He took a dot around them. Beings of every shape and color did the same. Hands and claws and tentacles reached out to each other. Species that had fought for millennia made peace. Enemies became partners. And humanity The species that had once been called primitive and violent watched with quiet pride. They had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something harder. They had taught it to be better. 100 years ago, Elena Vasquez had walked away from a table because she refused to bow. Now her descendants stood at a new table, surrounded by equals and friends. The galaxy was not perfect. It never would be. But it was healing, and that was enough. The stars shone down on the new Parliament building, the same stars that had watched humanity take its first steps into space so long ago. They would watch for millions of years more, as the compact grew and changed and faced new challenges. But one thing would never change. At the heart of the galaxy, carved in stone, those simple words would remain. A reminder of what happened when the universe underestimated humanity, and a promise that no one would ever make that mistake again.